Delay. Welcome. I am so glad that you're here and that you're obviously interested in a life that involves living in the present moment. I have my friend Marieken here with us. Say hi.
Hi. Thanks, Asha, for
There she
hosting
is.
this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad that that you're able to join us. Those of you viewing, and I'm glad that Marieken's here. Both of us have similar but different perspectives on how to really be living in the present moment. And, as a promise to you, we said there were 3 things that we were going to cover today, and we are committed to doing this in a half an hour. Your questions are important, so make sure that if you're watching this live that you connect on the chat room and ask your questions. We're here for you. And the 3 things that we're really going to talk about are, one is moving away from, reading the books, really going from that I'm trying to be in the present moment and more into actually living the experience of what does it feel like, what are all the senses involved, and how do I actually know if I'm living in the present moment or not, right? Rather than from an intellectual perspective. So that's what we'd like to cover today. The second thing is, what's the attitude or what's the intention that we need to be having to really sustain this? And third is, how do you command to be in the present moment? So I want to start off, first I really want to honor that, it was Marieken who first invited me into the state, and so I'm delighted to have her on here. And it's been a couple of years since I had the experience with her, and I think we've both sort of evolved in different ways, in different but same ways, and I think you're hopefully will be of service to you, and you'll be able to appreciate how these 2 different perspectives of the same thing can help you jump into really living that life of being in the present moment. So, Marieken, anything that you want to say to kind of start us off?
No, not really. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that you are framing it this way, and I can't wait to actually dive into it. So if you want to take an angle, for starters, then we can actually start a conversation about it.
Sure. So, I was the main thing why I wanted to talk about, like, having it less be a cerebral experience, right? So most people are reading all these books. Most people, typically when I hear people talk about living in the present moment, they usually are talking about their struggle in living in the present moment more than actually, like, I'm in the moment. So tell me what you think about, when people talk about their struggle of being in the present moment.
Yeah, I can relate to it a lot. I used to live in that same struggle, and once I was, began to live in this presence or present moment experience, what was so interesting is how simple it is and how it has nothing to do with any mental understandings of anything. Really look at the simplest human beings are newborns, and they completely live in the present moment. They have nowhere else to go, because the only thing about us that can go outside of the present moment is our mind, is our thinking. So we can learn something from very young children and animals even. And I'm not suggesting that we should return to childhood or return to animalhood, but we have almost literally thrown the baby out with the bathwater when we grew up. So we can have both. We can have the adult perspective and an ability to project into the future and remember things in the past and have language and all that. But remember also what we had available to us when we were first born, that very simple, innocent state. So it's nothing foreign to us, and I think that's why we love infants, and that's why we love pets, because they remind us of something that we know we already know and we knew and we've just forgotten. So it's not really something new that we're teaching, it's helping people remember.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about, I mean, in a few years back, I was engaging a lot in this conversation of sacred balance between the feminine aspects of who we are and the masculine aspects of who we are, and sort of that the masculine aspects have really taken over, and that's really evident in business, in politics, this sort of thinking, right? The thinking has such respect and reverence in our culture, and why these books are so popular. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with reading. I think it's a beautiful way for us to even have experiences, even if we're not able to. I don't know about you, but I definitely have certain books that have been very instrumental and activational for me. One being The Power of Now, Edgar Tolle's book. And but what happens then is that we read and read and read and read in this like hunger state, right?
Yes.
This hunger state of I want to be in the present moment, and I and I want to make myself think my way into the present moment, and
Yes.
right? So how do you balance out the intellectual and the experience of being in the present moment? Or where do you see the role of the intellect?
Well, I think we first of all, I think when we read a book like that, it's not just we're reading it. We may think we are reading it just on the level of the intellect, but a book like that, written by a person like Eckhart Tolle or other people that have realized this place of living, is actually in transmission. And I remember reading that book a long time ago, and as I was reading it, I would feel the state, but then 2 or 3 days later, gone. And then I would try to think myself back to it. And I think that's where the mistake happens. I think, when I teach, I do try to appeal to the mind, because I think we need to get the mind on board. So we do need to satisfy, because what's presence and living in the present moment is so simple that an infant can do it and an animal can do it. The mind wants to dismiss it and say, well, that can't be that simple. I spent all these years studying spiritual texts. How can it be this simple? So we do have to, I think, in that sense, address the adult part of ourselves to show why it is this simple, so that it doesn't dismiss something that is actually simple, but also very profound and can change the way you experience your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a heady person myself, so I can definitely relate to revering the mind and reading and all these things. And the way that I frame it is you got to look at it as it's almost like as a company, right? So you have this company and you have all these different employees, and one of them is the mind. Then there's all the different senses, the feeling, the touching, the all these, the smell, sight, and everything else, right? And then there's renditions of it, movement, singing, all these different things. And so then the mind has kind of like taken on the role of everyone else. And when the mind, and evolutionary, there was a reason for that, right? So now let's say we are actually evolving. Well, now, from my perspective, the evolution is really about, we talk about quieting the mind, and it's not about quieting the mind to the point of stupidity. It's really about quieting the mind so that it's just doing the role that it's intended to do.
Yes, exactly.
So,
and quieting the mind can be useful temporarily, just because since the mind is so noisy, it is the thing that has kind of drowned out the present moment. So for most people, there's a stage where the mind needs to quiet down for them to recognize the present moment for what it is. But once you recognize it deeply, then the mind can get back to being busy, and it will no longer be able to drown out the present moment. So that's, the connection with the present moment needs to be recognized to a strong enough degree that the mind no longer drowns it out, and then it doesn't matter how busy the mind is.
So do you agree that, or do you believe or know that part of it is about kind of commanding the mind, or having it be one of the employees or one of the
Yes.
pieces to the puzzles. Is
Yes,
that?
I'm not about denying the mind at all. I actually think the mind is an amazingly wonderful tool. I'm a dreamer. I love to dream. I love to be in the mind, and I don't want to discount that. But there's for much of my life, I was so in the mind that the bigger picture was lost. And so then, the mind, like everything else, has a shadow side. And the shadow side is that we can drop into negative thinking. And if you're not in touch with the present moment, this negative thinking can take on a life of its own, and we kind of fall down a rabbit hole of nastiness.
Yeah.
And the other problem with the mind is if it's if it's over dominant. I forget exactly what I want to say here. Oh, we start living in assumptions, and we no longer check what's real and what's not real. So, for example, in relationships, it's very simple. You can get irritated with somebody and get angry and assume that this person intended something against you. And if you don't check with that person what were your intentions, then that can take a whole life of its own. And the same is true with our inner stuff. We have learned to believe and find what our mind says really important. And so when the mind is having negative self-talk, or saying, oh, you're not good enough, or oh, you should be worried about money, or all the stuff that the mind throws at us, if we don't actually check to see if it's true, if we don't investigate, if we don't stay curious, then the mind has complete reign over us. So part of living in the present moment is that it allows us to go to your factory model, to see the whole factory and not just the room in which the mind is living or working. So if you can step back and see the whole factory, then you see, oh, there's this little voice in this part of the factory, but there's all this other stuff going on in the rest of the factory. So it gives you a much better vantage point from which to check whether what the mind is saying is accurate or not. And I will tell you, 99, if not 100% of the time, it's not accurate, because the mind is only talking in concepts, and it can never actually equal experience.
And I think most people that are listening to this know the suffering that the mind can bring us, right? Like, they're pretty aware of that. They experience it probably on a daily basis. And I think I remember you saying that you were also, like myself, a longtime meditator, and that, a lot of Buddhists talk about, or anyone who's teaching meditation, of that sort of like other perspective, right? When you're able to look at your life from that other perspective and really able to see all the pieces of it. There's even people at MIT and Harvard studying the brains of longtime meditators, the Tibetan monks, and looking to see, well, what's happening in their brain, how come they are able to have this kind of experience, and kind of analyzing the brain, But again, these are longtime meditators. Now, what I found was that by making this choice that you invited me into, by making this choice, I don't really have to meditate for, I don't know, an hour or even 20 minutes. It's the choice to be in the present moment is really a choice of the now. To make it really simple.
Yeah, it makes life a meditation. Instead of you meditating, life meditates you. So it's an entirely different perspective. You start the meditation with what used to be the goal of your meditation.
Yeah, exactly. And what I tell people, it's almost like it's this doorway, right? So let's say you and I, by being here and by people connecting to this conversation, they're able to connect to how we are in the present moment. And by connecting to that, we're really inviting them into a doorway, a door, a room, a space that they can tap into at all times. what would you say about that? And can you add to that? Like, so people know that they are definitely in suffering because they are giving too much power to the mind, and they don't really know how to get out of that. And we're saying, well, by you connecting to just our conversation, you can have this choice. And we'll open it up even more. So we'll go kind of deeper into that doorway, or kind of bring you into this space in an even more profound way. What would you say to that?
Yeah, two things. I think, first of all, let's go back to the example of the infant, that we can go back to that example. So an infant doesn't have the mind at all, at least not in the way we have it. It's not that it doesn't have a mind, but it's not yet filled with stuff. So how do they live, and where do they live? Well, they live in their bodies, and they experience the world not through concepts and words and thinking. They experience the world through their senses. So I think our senses are a key ingredient in living in the present moment. We have to, in some way or another, connect to our bodies, and our way our bodies interact with the world is through our senses. So that makes total sense. We actually can sense the present moment. So that's one step. And the other thing is that the reason why I believe we can, what I call transmit or transfer or offer presence to another person, is because every person, or almost every person, has the ability for empathy. So when we walk into a room and pay attention to a person in a room, we can kind of feel if this person is really angry or upset, or if this person is very peaceful. I never really realized that, but for years my friends kept telling me, just being in a room with you makes me feel peaceful. So it began to click. And then when I first was brought into presence by Rainier from Presence for Life, who introduced me to this, it just became very clear to me that it has to do with the intelligence of our subconscious, of our bodies, our brains, and our nervous system that can copy. So it's nothing supernatural, and not that I can explain how it happens, but there is something like mirror neurons. The scientists have words for this. They can explain why we pick up, why we have empathy. And so it is that ability that is used when presence is transferred. It's not that I am transferring presence to you, but it is that you, by paying attention, pick up and begin to copy what you're seeing completely on an unconscious level, on a physical, non-mental level. So the only thing that can get in the way is your mind going, oh, how does this work? Or I don't believe this, or I'm not interested. Yeah, so it takes your attention, your interest, and the willingness to just let that natural process that you're using day in, day out, every time you interact with people, and measure, is this person an enemy or a friend? Is this, we do that through our ability of empathy.
Yeah, and it's nothing, really out there. The fact that we're empathic animals, really. It's part of mothering, right? As a mammal, if we don't have empathy for our crying child, then we won't nurse the baby, or we won't care for it or keep it warm. So it's a very animalistic thing, I think, to just feel. And it's actually very survivalistic too, because if you're in a situation where, saber-toothed tiger kind of situation, in a very unconscious primal part of your brain, if you're in a room with people who have a lot of hostility towards you, well, that's not a safe place for you to be. So it's important for us to have these sort of higher sensitivity to our space and to the unseen things that unfold, and really hormones. That's part of what we're sensing, is the hormones that are sort of up in the air, that we release just through our skin, or
plus we have they say we have an electromagnetic field around us. So where does mine end and yours begin? And even, but that, maybe none of that even explains, because we can do this over distance. So, hormones might not explain that, but I cannot explain it. But I know there is an explanation. It doesn't. It's something that people have always done, that we're doing every day. When people are on Skype and talking to their mother or their friend, they get this, their nervous systems sync up, and that's why we enjoy being with people that make us feel good. Yeah. Why do they make us feel good? Well, part of that is the interaction between the two, where we keep calibrating and we get into a good mood together. So yeah. It's really not magical. One of the things that I enjoy is to let people see how easy and simple this is, and that we don't need any supernatural ideas or paradigms to explain the simple ability for us to live in the present moment, like an animal, like a child. Mm-hmm. We don't need big books to figure that out.
Well, one of the ways that so you and I chatted a little bit, and part of what you shared is that first, it's almost like there has to be somebody inviting you into that space. Would you agree with that? Or
I don't know.
So far from your findings,
yeah.
You're seeing that someone midwives you in, so to speak.
I think that can be very helpful. I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think people can just drop in. Like, for example, Eckhart Tolle just dropped in. He hit bottom and boom, there he was. I do think it's helpful, and I still, I host meditations every day, live, where we get together on a conference call and are in presence together, because it strengthens it to do it with another person. Mm-hmm. It increases the power or the feeling of it, the sensing of it, when we do it together and intentionally. So in that sense, I believe we're community creatures. We're not meant to do things alone.
Yeah.
So it is helpful to have guidance in the beginning, but I don't think necessarily that's true that everybody needs it. I think people can discover this on their own as well. But the other thing is, presence is not an end in itself. That's just where the work begins, or where our development or our evolution begins. So often when people have discovered presence, after it is when guidance is most helpful. Because then people who already know how to navigate and live there are able to share what that's like, and how when healing shows up, and when old stuff that we've always suppressed, and we stop suppressing them and things begin to release. That's the type of stuff that people often need help and support with as well. So I do think having a midwife or a facilitator, whatever you want to call it, can be useful from time to time, which is why I decided to mentor people with this. But I don't think everybody needs it, and I don't think it's an absolute necessity. But I do think it can be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, probably not everybody needs it, but given the state of our world, I would feel pretty confident in saying that most people are needing support and help around, what I call it, heaven on earth, right?
Yes,
everybody wants to experience heaven on earth, and from what I know is that the first step is really to tune into being here and now. And one of the things that you said that I think can be really scary for people, and we're sort of going to go into really bringing people to feel and sense and tune into, even at a deeper level, what it feels like to be in the present moment, or maybe invite them into how they can connect to that, so that when they're out about in their day, they can say, yeah, this, I'm not in my head, I'm really experiencing this. But before we do that, one of the things you said was connecting or awakening the senses. And that can be very, very scary for people.
In what way?
In the way that they, there's been a big wave in the past, say 10 years, where it's been about suppressing the feelings.
Yes.
And trying to control the feelings. And, if you're involved in politics, if you're involved in business, if you're involved in any kind of community, and your emotions become more prominent over, staying cool, calm, and collected, or become, overexert themselves over your intellect, there's a lot of shaming around that, right? So that is scary for people. So people are really afraid of what they feel, and they think, or they feel that, well, I shouldn't be feeling all these things, and I need to control that. And kind of, how do I control that? And so then there's this, like, okay, well, then you meditate. So you're in the present moment, but really, by being in the present moment, we really are inviting people to actually feel more. So it gets really confusing for people, right? We probably will have one of our other segments go more into the feelings and the emotions, because I feel like that really merits a little bit more time. But if you can just comment real quick on that, and we'll kind of honor that topic as a very important topic, but with more time. Can you just say something about it before we really kind of bring that energy of being in the present moment?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think people's systems have self-protective mechanisms in them. So I don't think, if somebody has a lot of stuff like right under the surface, their system will not easily enter presence. So I don't think you have to worry, The other thing is that what I have found, that I am bringing people into presence differently than I have early on when you were first doing it with me, because I feel there is a softer and gentler and kinder way to do it, and that is by bringing my attention into presence, but not just presence, but loving presence. So I engage the heart while also bringing my attention to my senses in a way that that brings me into presence. So and again, very very simply, that is, when you look at an infant, they don't just have their attention in their senses, but they also have their senses wide open. So those are kind of the two hints that I want to offer people to play with, is to open your senses and to and it doesn't if you're afraid of feeling, then don't use your feeling sense. Use your visual sense, use your hearing sense. It doesn't have to be your felt sense.
Yeah.
Although the felt sense is the strongest one and the most grounded way to experience the present moment. You can experience the present moment visually or auditorily or through your taste or through your smell.
So there's a comment in the chat room, and so they're saying you're speaking about the natural empathic connection that starts the response when you were talking about feeling empathic, but it doesn't seem that it's enough either, when we also mention that this occurs through the total awareness of the body. People can sense something going on, but unless they go into their bodies, they have trouble experiencing presence. Do you want to comment on that?
I think there's truth there, although you can experience presence with just a part of your body. So, for example, you can go into presence by opening your hearing sense and just listening to all sounds without focusing on any particular sound. That will move you into a presence, but that presence is kind of up here. So a much more powerful presence, yes, is to feel into the whole body and to just. I think we should just do it, because it's almost.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're at the half-hour thing.
Yeah.
So for the audience, there's nothing you need to do. Asha and I are just going to bring our attention to presence and just notice if anything happens for you, and don't worry if it doesn't. This is not an ideal way to transfer presence, because we have no real ability to interact real time with each person in the audience to check if there's what might get in the way. But just let's notice. Let's see if anybody notices something happening when we enter presence more clearly ourselves, more deeply ourselves.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's begin, and in about a minute or so we check. So I'll begin.
Okay.
So right now my mind is pretty still, and I'm very aware of the whole space in which my body exists. There's a lot of space and quiet in the head. I'm very aware of kind of a pulsing sensation moving through my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, a lot of pulsing, and I was definitely aware that it was my face that was on while we were having the experience, and I don't know if any part of me changed as we were going deeper into it, like my facial expressions, but I just had this moment of realizing that I was being seen, and my heart opened up more to truly be seen
That's
in this
great.
moment. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see. Are there any comments of people?
Oh, yeah, let's see. Well, not yet. So we'll see. Okay. Okay. No, not yet. Not yet. Nothing on yet. But we'll check it. We'll keep it on and check on that. Oh.
Yeah. But I definitely want to reiterate the comment of the person earlier, that I do believe that the felt sense is the most, really opening up the felt sense so that you're feeling your whole body all at once is the most powerful way to experience the present moment.
Yeah.
And to really, because what happens then is if you're feeling the whole body all at once, you're also aware of the space that's surrounding your body and the space that's permeating your body. And it really is a very rich experience to kind of take a walk around the neighborhood and taking everything in while being so embodied and permeated with space. So it's, that to me is the most sublime way to be in presence.
One of the ways, I mean, for me, before I, kind of entered this doorway, if you will, to kind of keep going with that analogy, going to the ocean, like being in front of the ocean was, to me, what I felt most alive to me to sit there. And sometimes it wasn't like, so I would be in front of the ocean and just kind of taking it in, and as a response to that, something would happen to me, right? I may have had a thought that would pop up, or a sensation or an emotion. And so what I've been, before I really kind of, work with people, because I do feel like it does, for most people, like you said, it does require some guidance and some mentoring into how to be in the present moment and how to really manage the mind so that it doesn't take us away from being here. And so tuning into, like, how do I feel like when I'm in front of the ocean has been a way where, if I've worked with somebody only once, or just like they've just had this kind of experience, I just remind, I want to empower people, right? I want to say, this is yours, this is yours.
Yes. And I think the ocean is an amazing thing you bring up, because what happens when we're on the beach? Now let's assume it's summer and we don't have a lot of clothes on. We're in our bathing suits and we're sitting on the beach. So first of all, we are brought into our felt sense. We're feeling things on our skin: the sun, the sand, wind. So we are brought into feeling our bodies while we're sitting on the beach. But also, and it's whole body. It's a whole body experience. But also, when you look out at the ocean, there's nothing to focus on. So you're going into wide angle, open focus, visual.
Pay attention here, people.
Yes, which is
giving
relaxing.
It all away, right here.
Yes. And when you're listening to the waves, it's a continuous sound. So there is no particular sound that you can listen to and drown out the waves. The waves are there. So you're also going into open focus hearing. So that's one of the reasons why at the ocean we drop into such relaxation. The same happens when we're hiking and we're on the mountains, and suddenly you walk across a corner and there is this wide vista, and your mind just drops still because your senses open up in that moment. Yes. So it is about being in the senses, but being in the senses in an open focused way. And so if you play with that, and there's no particular one technique or method to do that. You just, there are techniques and methods, but you can create your own. It's just if those two elements are there, and then to have a more pleasant and joyful and warm experience, engage your heart, add loving kindness to the experience. So if you flavor that emptiness with loving kindness, it's a very wonderful and safe space to be.
Yeah, and there's something that feels really sacred about being in the ocean or in nature, right? So that sense of feeling safe is what allows us to feel okay. It's okay to open up. So that mind that is trying to keep us safe and keep us in in safety doesn't have a job in that moment.
Yes, and I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. Is that's the job the mind is doing. All the suffering it's creating, it's doing it out of maybe you're misguided, but it's doing it because it believes it needs to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't make any sense to fight the mind, because the mind is just trying to help you. So all we need to do is teach it how it can help you better.
Exactly.
And that's where the mentoring may come in, to help people see through because the mind is trying to help. So when it sees that what it's doing is counterproductive, it will stop doing it, and it will learn a new thing to do.
Yeah. So you're kind of answering that question of, look, how do we command the present moment? And well, maybe just say it in your own words. What attitude or what perspective do you recommend for people to have? Let's say someone is just experiencing this for the first time, or they've kind of been following you or me for a little bit. What's the attitude, and then how would you recommend that they command that present moment?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, I would say the attitude that's most important in when you live in the present moment is self-compassion, so that you respond to whatever shows up in the present moment from an attitude of compassion and self-kindness. So that, for example, if you find you recognize a sensation and your mind goes, oh, that's anxiety, you kindly, compassionately respond to that anxiety instead of our usual running around and trying to fix it mode. It is about, because in the bigger space of presence, you can see that what you call anxiety is only a small area of your body that's having some intense sensations, because you're now in the senses, so you're feeling actual anxiety. It's no longer just a story of anxiety. So you can feel that it is happening maybe in your belly, but the rest of your body is still this nice field of spaciousness. So you can kind of bring an attitude of self-compassion to the area of the body that is feeling the discomfort, instead of letting that discomfort kind of swallow you up. Yeah. So because the discomfort is now part of a much bigger space, you can hold it in an attitude of loving kindness or compassion. So I don't know if that was what you were asking. But.
I just wanted to kind of get your perspective on it, and just to one of the people said in the chat room that when we were doing the experience, kind of going deeper, they experienced joy. So I just wanted to share that. And when I thought about, well, what is the attitude that I have, I felt the most important thing for me has been to feel that I can, to feel that certainty, that certainty within me that I have access to this. This isn't prescribed, or it's not for specific people in the world or special awakened people. This is really available for all of us. And when I really jumped into that certainty, I began to allow it to really be a part of my life.
Yes, I think anybody who has a body and who can pay attention can be in presence.
Yeah.
Because the only part of us that is not in the present moment is our mind, and even the mind itself is in the present moment, but it can think, it can project into the past and the future. But the mind itself still also exists in the same space. When you're in presence, you can actually see thoughts or feel notice that thoughts are happening in the same space as everything else, all the other experiences in your body. So the thoughts themselves happen in the now. They're just about something else. And they're about yesterday or they're about tomorrow, but the thoughts themselves are also in the now. So if you can bring attention to the body lives, cannot go anywhere but here and now. So that's our tool.
And I there's more to this conversation,
yes.
and for those of you, for you listening and watching this, this is the first of a series, and we'll be going a little bit deeper into some of these topics that we touched about. I know we're over our half-hour mark, but of course, it's such a fascinating topic. And just very quickly, I just want, Marieken, can you tell people how they can be in touch with you if they feel a connection to wanting to mentor with you to do this work?
Yeah, maybe next time we should put that under our names, the websites. But it's Marieken Volz, spelled the way you see it under my video. .com is my website. I'm actually in the process of creating a whole new website, but that's not up yet, so I'll have to do with the old one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the best way for people to get a hold of you.
Yeah, or they can look me up on Facebook. There's many different places where I can be found. If you Google me, you'll see a number of places. My email, you can email me at mariekenvolz.com.
Okay.
Those are probably the best places.
All right. Well, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for all of you listening. If you're just contact me so that you can be a part of knowing when the continuation of the series will be broadcasted. And you can email me at ashastories@gmail.com. And you can be a part of these conversations even further. Have a fabulous day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.